And ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for your main event. In this corner, from parts unknown, coming in at a combined weight of 532 pounds, the J. Brone Express. And in this corner, utilizing the Freebird rules, your tag team champions of the world, at a combined weight of 832 pounds, the Brothers in Kayfabe.
Welcome, everyone, to the Brothers in Kayfabe podcast. I am one of your three hosts on this podcast. One of the brothers. We're not working, or we're not shoot brothers, but we're working brothers, and pretty close to shoot brothers. But like I said, I'm one of your hosts, Jake, and I'm gonna kick it over to one of our other hosts, Jimmy. Jimmy,
What's
go ahead,
up?
man.
My name is Jimmy, and I am one of the Brothers in Kayfabe. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I am the newest person to wrestling out of the three of us. But
I don't know about that.
I don't know, man. I love it. I love it, but haven't been involved in watching it for too terribly long. Maybe only like a year and a half, couple years, something like that. So, but I'm excited to do this podcast with you guys. This is awesome.
Touche. So you're like the newbie in the group. Awesome. I didn't know that. I thought you've been watching wrestling for a lot longer. So like that's kind of surprising to me. But then we got the man over here that's going to be editing this podcast, and one of the smartest wrestling fans I know. That's Mr. Landon. Landon, go ahead, man.
Hey guys, what's up? My name is Landon. I am the third brother in Kayfabe. I pride myself in being a wrestling historian. Basically, if it is anything to do with professional wrestling, I take pride in knowing about it. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Basically, everything Dave Meltzer loves and everything Jim Cornette loves as well, for better or for worse. What's fun for me on this podcast is, Jake, I've known you for about 6 years, 6.5 years, and Jimmy for
since you graduated high school.
For just a couple of years. Fun fact, the way Jake and I first met was, it was Halloween of 2013. Jake was like a teacher's assistant at the high school I attended. I was a senior in high school, and it was costume day, and all of a sudden I see this dude wearing a Macho Man shirt, a wig, and a bandana, carrying around the IC title.
Oh man,
and
that's awesome.
I was like, I gotta talk to this guy. And that was 6 years ago, and we've been brothering softly ever since. And Jimmy and I attended college together, just to bring everything full circle. But it was a church camp that we were both playing at. Went to hang out with some of his bandmates that I was really close with, and saw Jimmy with a Macho Man Randy Savage action figure. So Macho Man bringing both of us together. In both cases, a stack of wrestling DVDs and comic books, and we just hit it off from there. You guys can't see this as we're recording this. Jake was just showing off one of the muscle figures. If you're from the 80s, you'll remember those, specifically a Macho Man one.
It's the Macho Man one, bro.
So let's just throw this out here. This is episode 1. For anyone who listens to this podcast, this is a place where we welcome Macho Maniacs, and anybody who doesn't like the Macho Man Randy Savage for whatever reason, this podcast isn't for you.
I would say go ahead and turn this podcast off if you do not like Macho Man.
Who doesn't like Macho Man? I've never heard a wrestling fan, even like small wrestling fans, like people that barely know wrestling. They know like 3 people usually: The Rock, Hulk Hogan, and Macho Man Randy Savage, and every single one of them have a Macho Man impression where they're going, "Oh yeah, brother!"
It's 'cause of the Slim Jim commercials.
Totally.
That's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
I talk about this with people all the time. Pro wrestling doesn't have the mainstream appeal that it used to have. In the sense to where it's like,
Yeah.
back in the 80s and 90s, everyone knew who Hulk Hogan was. Everyone knew who Macho Man was.
Oh, yeah.
I think, no joke, I think my earliest memory of Hulk Hogan is either the Muppets movie or I think it's Gremlins 2 when he's in the movie theater. And
Yeah, he's in Gremlins too.
I just want to.
And
I was gonna say
that was Muppets in
in
Space,
that's
wasn't
right,
it?
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Jimmy?
I was gonna say, Macho Man brought the three of us together. But I would also like to say, Jake, you didn't know that I'm a new wrestling fan, but Macho Man is what brought me to wrestling, because I had a friend in college who he's a performer, and he's in lots of different bands, but he has his own like music act that he does.
Can we shout him out?
Shout out to Campbell Young.
Yes.
This is my boy Campbell Young.
We love you, Campbell.
He would open his shows with just a recording playing over the loudspeakers of "Cup of Coffee" and the Big Time promo.
Ooh,
So it'd be like Mean
coffee
Gene.
in the big time, yeah.
Yeah, dude. It's amazing. And it would just be like Mean Gene introducing Macho, and then the Macho promo. And then it would end with the promo would end with like a snare hit, and it would go into his first song, which is incredible. And so
That's awesome.
I was like, I would laugh out loud at that.
Dude, the Johnny Extreme show. Isn't that what he called it for a little bit?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Maybe I'm failing Campbell Young right now, but I got really into watching Macho promos on YouTube.
Why not?
Cream Rises to the Top, all that good, just all the classics, right?
Oh yeah.
And so when I was at FYE one day, they had this basically like box set of Macho Man that came with like a shirt and bandana and sunglasses and like 6 DVDs, all this stuff.
Yeah.
I had it. They had it for like super discounted, and I bought it, and I watched. I don't remember what Landon will know because he's the historian. It's the SummerSlam where it's Macho versus Ultimate Warrior.
Okay. Yeah.
What year is that?
Was that 7?
That is SummerSlam 1992.
Okay, so I watched that match at this church camp that we both played at, Landon, and it was like, whoa, this is so good. This is such a good match. It's the first time I'd seen a match that was that good. And I don't even know if that match is good at this point. It was just like the first one I'd ever seen. And then I was talking to you just at this camp as we're just sitting around doing nothing, and you were like, hey, do you want my, my WWE Network login? And I was like, yeah, I do. And then from there, it was like off to the races. I mean, just like I watched so much wrestling that I burned myself out for a while. That was the extent in which I watched wrestling.
Well, and then he introduced you to our good friends Vern and Kinzer, right?
He did, yeah. So I started listening to Vern and Kinzer's podcast. I still haven't met them in person, which is a shame, but someday.
Dude, I've known Kinzer for 10 years, and I still haven't met him in person. So, we'll see if we can make that happen.
Well, he's such a busy man.
I know. And,
maybe we can get – I was going to say maybe we can get Kinzer or Vern on the podcast at some point.
Maybe at some point.
I think we should. What I need to do on that end is so if you guys didn't know, Vern and Kinzer had a podcast called Kayfabe Wrestling News, and I used to help edit that podcast on the side.
Yeah.
And they are. It's like I try and be very generous with my editing duties, because my job is if you want to have a podcast, I want to help you make that a reality. But Vern, at first I thought it was Kinzer, but I think it's just Vern is just bad with money. And so I gotta get that squared away. They've got to balance that
Well-
we need to figure out. But
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun to have those guys on.
Well,
I could see Vern being bad with money.
last I heard, Kinzer's gone AWOL. Not really anybody knows where he is, so we'll see if we can get a hold of that dude. But anyway, like Jimmy, you were talking about how long you've known Landon. I mean, I knew of you for about a year. From Landon, and then like we finally met at Raw in January here in Oklahoma City. So
Totally, yeah.
And,
Can we tell that story of that incredible night of Raw?
dude?
First of all, I just want to say real quick that I didn't know Big Show would be as important as he is to this first episode, but I have 3 different Big Show stories to tell. I just want to put that out there.
Well, I mean, Big
know,
Show is
it's
kind of
ridiculous.
integral to our meeting story, but like,
It is true.
you know,
So
that was January 6th.
Yeah.
Yes.
January 6th Raw.
Right after New Year's.
Yeah, so long story short, shout out to friend of the show, Tad Davis. He bought some tickets to Raw and could not go, so me and Landon were able to go in his place. And
Yep.
Jimmy, you got tickets.
Okay, so we got tickets. That was the time in which I wasn't really watching wrestling. So my wife had just quit her job, so we just didn't have a whole lot of money to like spend on things.
Yeah.
So we were like, let's just not go to this Raw. It'll be fine. They come back like once a year, basically. We'll just go
Right.
next year. And then Landon called us at like, oh my gosh, it must have been
It was like
2:30.
It was no,
maybe
it
even
was
closer. It was like 4.
It was like 4:30 because
Oh my gosh.
I was at the doctor to get my checkup. Shout out to all the asthmatics out there that are at risk during this coronavirus. And so I was planning on going with Jake. And so my dad, he works at a office building downtown where we live, and periodically they will get tickets to events. I'd gotten some tickets to see a WWE house show back in July, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to see if I could get them for Raw.
Yeah.
And so, like, I would text him every day and be like, hey, ask about the tickets, and he'd be like, oh, they're not up for grabs yet. And then he's like, hey, sorry, like, someone already claimed them. Whatever. So I wasn't going to go to Raw.
Yeah.
Then enters Jake with the free tickets that he'd been gifted. So it's like, oh, sweet, I'm going to go to Raw. I'm sitting in the doctor's office the day of, texting Jake about, hey, I'm going to leave here. It'll be about a 25-minute drive. Then we can meet up. All of a sudden, my dad calls me while I'm, like, sitting on, like, the examining table in the doctor's office. He's like, hey, so whoever got the tickets for Raw didn't claim them, so they're yours if you want them. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to take them. Hang up. I call Jimmy and just say, hey, this is super short notice. If you and your wife want to go to Raw, I've got tickets.
Yeah. My wife is also a pretty big wrestling fan along with me, which is nice.
Yeah.
And so I asked her, and she immediately was like, duh, we want to go to Raw. And so I was like, okay, this is crazy. So we were doing a church thing that night, and we left. We like couldn't make it exactly on time.
Yeah.
To Raw. So you guys were already in. Main Event had started taping. We got downtown, and walked over to the building, and I called Landon and said, hey, we're outside. Come give us our tickets. And he was like, dude, Hawkins and Ryder just came out.
Right.
Which is like one of like Landon's favorite tag teams.
Shout
And
out
so-
to the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast.
Very true. I love it.
The Major Bros.
The Major Bros. The Major Bros were out, so they couldn't. Landon was like, "Do you mind if I come after this match?" And I was like, "Dude, of course not. No big deal. Doesn't even matter." So Kaylee and I were just like leaned up against the wall of the arena, just like waiting, just like this is gonna be so much fun, just talking about it. This dude comes up out of nowhere and goes, "Hey, you guys need tickets for the show?" I thought he was a scalper, so I was like, no, man, we got some dudes coming inside, or coming from the inside to give it to us. Like, don't worry about it. Thanks, though. And he was like, okay. Him and his daughter were there, and they started walking towards the front door. And I was like, that's kind of weird, whatever. He turns around, sticks out 2 tickets, and goes, take them, give them to someone you know, and just gives us these 2 tickets. He said, I think, and he said, I think they're pretty good seats. That's the understatement of a century. They were directly above broadcast, basically.
Yeah.
Which was incredible. And so we were like, well, let's just use these because these will be better than the tickets Landon has for free. So we walked in and then called Landon and said, dude, we got in. And he was like, what? How? So I told him. And then he called his roommate, and then his roommate and his roommate's brother got in for free. So we all went to Raw for free, and it was incredible.
Like, out of happenstance, there was 6 people that got to go to Raw for free in our friend group.
Right.
And,
it was
like,
absolutely insane.
And, 24 hours before that, it was just going to be me and my friend Tad, and none of us were going to Raw besides us 2.
Right. It all happened in a day, and it was incredible.
Because I had texted Landon, like, on Sunday, I think, and was like, hey, do you want to go to Raw?
Yeah, it's so cool. But that was the Raw where Big Show came back.
Yeah. Yeah, the biggest pop of the year, I think the biggest pop I've ever had at a wrestling show was for Big Show at the stupid Monday Night Raw, and I'm like, I don't even like Big Show. Like, I like Big Show. I appreciate what he's done for the business, but like, it's the freaking Big Show. Who wants to watch a Big Show match in the main event?
Yeah. Well, apparently Vince McMahon last night. So there you go.
Right.
Yeah. Well, before we
I have not
before
even
we
watched
talk
that.
about the before we talk about some of the wrestling that's happened this week, especially WrestleMania, I think it'd be fun. Jimmy, you shared kind of your introduction into wrestling.
Yeah.
Jake, do you remember what your earliest wrestling memory is at all?
Yes, I do, actually, because wrestling was not allowed in my house.
Same here.
My mother still to this day thinks it's like one of the worst things in the world. But I would stay up. Remember, like, when, like, y'all might not be old enough for this, but like in the early 2000s, late 90s, after, like, late at night, they would have Raw replays.
Mm-hmm.
And so all I remember, really, I don't remember how long ago it was I would wait up. I figured out the nights that the Raw replays were on, and I would wait up and I would watch Stone Cold and The Rock on Raw replays late at night whenever I was supposed to be in bed and go to, like, elementary or middle school the next day. And I would watch Raw. And I want to say Nitro had already been done. I do remember playing the WCW versus NWO video games in the 90s. So I already had, like, an introduction to WCW, but I don't think I ever was, like, able to actually watch WCW until I was older, of course. But I either got in right at the end of the Attitude Era or I was right at the beginning of the Ruthless Aggression era. So, like, that's about where I started watching wrestling. And from there, I stopped for a long time just because it was like, oh, well, wrestling isn't cool. Like, every, 16-year-old kid says at some point, except for Landon Bumgarner. But,
Did I die?
And then, like, right before I went to college, I dated this girl who was a wrestling fan and started, watching wrestling again. And that relationship didn't last very long, but the wrestling stayed. And all through college, I watched every Monday Night Raw. I watched every Friday Night SmackDown. I watched NXT whenever it was on Sci-Fi Channel, when it was the dumb game show type deal. I watched ECW. I watched, sometimes TNA, because I was like, who's this Kevin Nash dude? Like, he's pretty freaking cool. And I had no idea who he was, except I was like, yeah, he's kind of old, though. He's got gray hair. But, I watched all that. But, like, in college, they would, release all the old WrestleManias and stuff on DVD. So I would go get wrestling DVDs at Walmart back whenever it was like, still the thing was you got the DVDs and that was the only way to watch some of this old stuff. And one of the first ones I got was WrestleMania 3. And now, obviously, WrestleMania 3 is like the pinnacle of WrestleManias. Like, everyone thought WrestleMania 3 was the greatest WrestleMania of all time for the longest time. And, of course, like, as a new-ish wrestling fan, I would you gravitate towards Hogan Andre. It's one of the most hyped up matches of all time. But I would wear that DVD out. And as I would watch it, I'd go, you know what? The better match is Macho Man Ricky Steamboat. Like, this is such a better match. And that's where the Macho Man came in for me. Like, he's my all-time favorite. I love the Macho Man. I've gone as him for Halloween like 4 or 5, 6 times. Like, just, that is my, like, now entrance to wrestling, because, like, those DVDs are what really made me the wrestling fan I am now, who actually appreciates good wrestling and not just what WWE puts out. Because, like, then I went and looked up other matches of Macho Man, and then I was like, holy crap, like, some of these people he fought in WCW were pretty cool. Maybe I should check them out. And then eventually I'm watching Jushin Thunder Liger and Ultimo Dragon and trying to find as much Japanese stuff as I can, which back then you could not find. I mean, you could find a little bit of it, and it was all really old, bad footage. So, like, luckily we have, like, high-res stuff now, but, like, that's just kind of how I got into wrestling, was just, like, by happenstance, right out of high school, got back into it and didn't think it was, like, a kiddie thing anymore.
Yeah. I just have to say that Landon, I want to hear your introduction to wrestling, but I also have to say that I saw Ultimo Dragon wrestle live in Japan, and it was awesome.
I hate you. I hate you for that. I love you, man. I love you. You're my brother, but I hate you right now that you've seen Ultimo Dragon live. But I mean, like, at least I've seen King of Dong Style live. So I mean, that
there you go.
That makes me happy. But
So
Landon, where did you get your start with wrestling?
So the two earliest instances I can think of, the very, very first one is, I don't know who this lady is. I don't know enough details to, like, you know when you remember stuff from when you're a little kid, but, like, you don't remember enough details to, like, adequately, like, describe it to your parents and be like, hey, like, who is this lady's house that babysit me?
Right.
Well, what do you remember? Like, did she have kids? I don't know. It's like, well, been more than 2 people that have babysat you over your childhood. So for me, it's a situation like that. I remember being at some lady's house that she had a kid my age.
Yeah. And
I had to been like a toddler. I'm thinking this is probably like 97, 98. And she also had an older son who's just a couple years older, maybe like 7 or 8 years old. And I remember being in the playroom, and they had a TV on that was playing the Garfield and Friends cartoon, which I was obsessed with. Like, that's what I wanted to watch. And she was like, hey, we're not going to watch TV, and turned it off. I was like, okay, well, I'll play with toys. And I started opening, like, they had like an old school, like, toy chest that, like, you lift up. And I started opening it up, and she, like, came and, like, closed it. She was like, no, we're not going to get toys out. And I was like, okay, well, hopefully my mom comes and gets me soon, 'cause this place sucks. So it gets close to the time whenever my mom is coming to pick me up. So like we go in the garage, open the garage door, and we're just like playing in the garage, just waiting for my mom to pull up and pick me up. And the older boy, he had a Hollywood Hulk Hogan and a Macho Man, and he was just repeatedly he had Hulk Hogan by the leg and just repeatedly like slamming it through this table, and the table would break, and he'd put it back together, and then he'd do it again. And I was just mesmerized. And I think I asked him to play if I could try, and he said no. And I didn't know what that was. I just knew they were toys I'd never seen before. They didn't look like any of the toys I had, and I wouldn't find out what those were until years later. So that's kind of wrestling memory number one, although I didn't know it was wrestling. And then my real first wrestling memory was, it had to have been either 2000 or 2001 in my living room, and all of a sudden on the TV Guide channel, a commercial of this grainy footage where it says steel chairs, and it showed somebody getting hit with a steel chair. It was like tables, somebody going through a table, staple guns, someone getting stapled in the forehead, barbed wire, and a fork. I remember the staple gun and the fork the most. And I just remember sitting there, and I was born in 95. So, like, seeing this as a 5-year-old or 6-year-old, I was like, I've never seen violence to this degree so real. And I just sprinted out. I'm assuming it was ECW.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
But if you search ECW commercial, it's very hard to narrow it down to specifics. And I sprinted out to the front yard where my dad was working. I said, Dad, I just saw this commercial where these guys they used a chair and a staple gun and barbed wire, and they were hitting each other. And my dad goes, oh, that's probably that WWF stuff. You don't need to watch it. And I was just like, oh, well, it looked pretty real to me. And then I wouldn't get into wrestling until I think 4th grade, when 2 of my best friends got into wrestling hardcore, and it was just very contagious. So now that we've shared our introduction into wrestling, I think we should share what's our favorite moment we've seen live, or like our favorite experience live.
So like, this is tough. Jimmy, how about you try yours?
I got mine for sure. So I got married a little over a year ago, and we got to go to Japan for our honeymoon to Tokyo. A huge, bucket list trip. It was a huge blessing that my wife and I got to go. And the 2 things I wanted to do while we were there were, I wanted to go retro game hunting in Akihabara, and I wanted to go see a wrestling match, a Japanese wrestling show. Like, I was like, I have to. So by the time we had, like, everything, like, shook out and we were, like, buying tickets to the show, the New Japan show was already sold out.
Of course.
Yeah, and this is in Kurikan Hall, by the way.
Oh, my gosh.
Obviously, like, legendary venue.
Dude.
So, I know. So we were like, oh no, New Japan is like sold out. Like, we can't go to a show. I like got so sad. And I actually texted Landon, and I was like, dog, the New Japan show sold out. He was like, hey, look up Dragon's Gate, look up like Noah, look up All Japan. This is stuff I didn't even know existed at the time. Like, that's how, like, I was just like, oh, New Japan Pro Wrestling is all that wrestling is in Japan. Like,
it's WWE for them. Like, that's their WWE.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. So I looked up a bunch of different ones, and the next night, the night after the New Japan show, the All Japan show was happening in Kurikan Hall. So we bought tickets, and we went and saw All Japan Pro Wrestling in Kurikan Hall in Tokyo, Japan. I have to say this. We go to this district. It's called, like, the Tokyo Dome district, I think. We literally walk up, like we're touching the Tokyo Dome. It's right there. I had no idea that that's where Wrestle Kingdom happened. I didn't know any of that.
Hallowed ground, dude.
Dude, it was unbelievable. I will also say we also went to this store called Totocon like the day before and bought. It's like vintage stock or half price books or something like that, but it's all wrestling. But it's just stacked. So I bought like VHS tapes, video games. I bought a cassette tape of Terry Funk's record. Shout out to my boy Terry. Terry Funk's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time because he's like so incredible. Anyways, I mean, so like I was already just so hyped. I was so hyped on all this stuff, and then we're walking past Tokyo Dome, and I'm thinking, Kurikan Hall, like there's not even a hall, like a building here. Like this must have taken us to the wrong place. We're gonna be late for the show. I was like freaking out, man.
No.
And it was like we see this little sign. I was like, hey, do you like this like information desk? And I was like, do you know where Kurikan Hall is? Can you point us there? She like points to this building and like it has the sign that says like Kurikan Hall, 5th floor. So literally, Kurikan Hall is on the 5th floor of just like this skyscraper thing. Like,
yeah,
it's like 10 to 15 stories or whatever. So we go in. We go up the elevator to the 5th floor. It opens up, and there's a bunch of people standing there. This is how I know what it's like for like people who come to America for things, because we get there, and we have our tickets in hand, and the which they wouldn't let me print them off. They had to ship them from Japan to my house in Oklahoma, get them out of the mail, and then we put them in the suitcase to fly back to Japan when we went. It was incredible. We have our tickets in hand, and the guy walks out of the door, and he starts just shouting orders at, like, everyone. And everybody's, like, getting in these different lines, like, in front of these doors, and some people are going down this staircase and, like, around and all this stuff. I mean, it was like, what in the heck is happening? So I just walk up to the guy, and I show him the ticket, and he just points to the staircase. So I walk into the staircase. He points us down. We go all the way down the staircase, stand in line, all the way back up, whatever. Then we enter into Kurikan Hall. They have belts all on the wall, like old Japanese belts, posters. You enter through the merch room. All of a sudden, you know, these Japanese wrestlers see us, these two like white people walk in, and literally they're like, champion, buy the t-shirt, like screaming at us to come buy like all this merch, and we're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And we walk into that merch room. We're completely like culture shocked at this point.
Right.
And there is this massive white dude with a mustache standing at the end of the hall. And I walk up to him, and he goes, well, what are y'all doing here? And I was like, no way. Turns out this dude's one of the wrestlers who's wrestling that night. His name's Joe Doring, I think is how you say it. Anyway, it was awesome. We got to talk to him for a little bit, take a picture. He like signed a picture of his. He had a knockoff. Landon, you'll like this. He had a knockoff Red Dead Redemption T-shirt.
Of course. Why not? I mean, that's indie wrestling as a whole.
Oh, it's amazing.
Oh, dude.
So we go in, we get in our seats. We're crammed in these bleachers like sardines. There's this guy on the right of my wife. Him and his dad are there. They brought 2 bags of like 7-Eleven bags full of food and drink and just ate the entire time. The whole show. The guy, so it's like those guys, my wife, me on the left of my wife, and the guy to the left of me didn't speak a lick of English. We talked a little bit through Google Translate, and every time someone would come out, he would like tell me like the chants. So like it, for instance, you know, like Kurt Angle comes out and we all yell, "You suck." For All Japan Pro Wrestling, I don't know any of the freaking chants that they're doing, but he's like trying to explain them to me in Japanese, and I'm like, don't know any Japanese, and I'm like trying to. It was incredible. The speakers were like right above us, and they were just blasting sound. One guy came out to Metallica's Battery, and it was just like, it was just like destroying my eardrums, and I loved every second of it. I got to see Ultimo Dragon. I got to see Tajiri wrestle. It was absolutely the coolest wrestling experience. We were besides there was like 3 white wrestlers there. We were the only white people in the audience, and absolutely the coolest live experience that I've ever had. Not the most entertaining show I've ever been to, but definitely the best overall experience. It was so freaking cool.
It's Kurikan Hall, dude. Like, you're at All Japan. We're just some boys from Oklahoma, like, and you were in Kurikan Hall, hallowed ground, man. Like,
I mean, yeah. Like now, when I my wife and I were both big fans of the Elite, and so when we watch like Being the Elite together, and they're in like in Kurikan Hall, we're like, holy cow, we're there. We see that. It was so cool.
Dude, so y'all were like the only gaijin there?
Literally, yes. And they, like, no joke, before the show started, they came up. I want to say this, before the title match, the very last match, they like listed off like the name of the belt and like all these prestigious champions, and the only one I recognized was Dory Funk. They were like. They were like, Dory Funku, and I was like, yes. But they brought out this like dude in an eagle costume with like a red, white, and blue like bow tie on, and like made fun of him, and everybody was like laughing at him. And Kaylee looked at me. She goes, "I think they're making fun of America right now." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I think they are."
Well, I mean, it's just like here.
So cool.
It's just like here when they always make fun of the foreign wrestlers, like, over there it's Japan #1, here it's USA #1. I mean, it's just like back when Bret Hart was a face in Canada but a heel in America. Like, it's just how it is. But
yeah, it was absolutely incredible though. It was so cool,
dude. I'm so jealous right now. Like,
someday we will all go to Japan.
Your like year and a half in wrestling is like more entertaining or more impressive than like my 15 years in wrestling. Like,
I don't know about that, but we were just so lucky that we were able to go do that. I mean, that was just it felt like a once in a lifetime opportunity for sure.
Landon, what about you, man?
So, the first pro wrestling show I went to was Raw in 2006. I got to go. What sticks out to me about that, and this isn't my favorite memory, it's just my first live show memory, was the pyro was so impressive that it's the Chesapeake Energy Arena now, but at the time it was the Ford Center.
Yeah.
It set the alarm off. So it shut off all the power in the building except the emergency lights. And so it was just silent, and Edge and Lita came out and talked on a microphone, and if you watch the broadcast, they're still getting signal and that's going through, but live we couldn't hear anything at all. And then like John Cena came out, and like his music's not playing. I don't think his Titantron was playing, but I think in post they put it in for the broadcast. And it ended up, like, after the first segment, all the power came back on, and it was just wild. But my favorite memory happened this year. So I'd never been to a pay-per-view before. And this year I went to the 2020 Royal Rumble.
I'm so jealous.
Down in Houston. You guys already know what it is.
Oh, dude.
Going into it, there were rumors of Edge coming back. The scumbags on the dirt sheets try and ruin all the good surprises, and were saying, like, hey, Edge has been spotted, like, training. Edge has been, like, recently cleared. And it's like, into Edge's own credit, he's got a documentary out on the network right now where he dresses as it's fantastic. He was like, anytime I did anything the dirt sheets would pick it up immediately, so then I'd have to get on Twitter and just flat out lie and deny it. And me being the pessimist I am, I was like, there's no way Edge is coming back, because I know if I get my hopes up and he doesn't come back, it will like permanently ruin my view on this trip to the Rumble. And it was just so cool. I was with my best friend and his dad. We just had an awesome guys weekend. And so we're sitting there, we're watching the Rumble. The card up to that point had been okay. This is going to sound so bad. The highlight of the women's Rumble for me was whenever Mighty Molly came out. Because it was cool to see her, but I was just spazzing out because the Hurricanes theme song was playing through the sound system. So that was like a bucket list thing. But you get to the men's Rumble match, and number 21 hits. And I was trying, just out of anticipation for something cool to happen, I was filming all, like, once it'd start counting down, I'd start filming. And I'd finally gotten tired. I was like, okay, like, it's pretty much everyone's going to come out. And it counts down, and as soon as one hits, you hear the "You Think You Know Me."
Oh, dude.
And just to be in that room and to hear
That was unreal.
that pop, like, I started screaming, like I was desperately trying to like open up my camera as fast as I could. I look over at David, my roommate, he's freaking out. It was just like one of those things, like, it feels so surreal to think, like, it. You hear wrestling fans talk about a lot of time, like, oh, like, I was there for that. That was my moment that I got to witness. And it's like, for me, it was very fulfilling to finally have a moment like that, to where it's like, I was there when Edge came out of retirement. And so, for me, that's my favorite wrestling memory, even though it's pretty new.
You were there when he came back from spinal fusion surgery. Like, nobody does that.
Right. It just felt so surreal. Because Edge had been very vocal in the past about how he never wanted any kind of on-screen role because he couldn't do anything physically, and he didn't want to, like, you don't want to have a to sound like a smark for a second, you don't want to have a baby face like on-air personality that can't get beat up by heels. And flip-flop, you don't want a heel personality that the baby faces can't get revenge on. So yeah, it was like to this day it doesn't feel real.
Like,
I'm so jealous. That is so cool.
Well, Royal Rumble, dude, that's my favorite pay-per-view. Like, I mean, everyone loves WrestleMania, but like Royal Rumble, that is my show. Like, I always love Royal Rumble. And so when you texted me that you're like, hey, I'm going to Royal Rumble, I like legitimately didn't want to be friends anymore for a second because I was so jealous. And then I was like, dude, that's so awesome. But like, remember the amount of trolling I was doing that whole week about Edge coming back? Like, I would post on Facebook, and it was like, Edge spotted in Houston hotel, and it was like a picture. It was like a picture.
The carpet.
Yeah, it was like a picture from like 9 years ago in a hotel, and you can obviously tell it's young Edge.
And you said something, you're like, I can tell because I was at this hotel recently and they just redid the carpet or something like that.
Yeah. But, man, I've never been in a room like either of you two, but I've got two moments, and they were both in the side room at the Myriad at Cox Convention Center in Oklahoma City. So the first one was the first NXT house show in Oklahoma City. I thought it was like,
it was a great show,
dude. The card was incredible. You had Finn Balor, you had Shinsuke Nakamura, like they were in the main against Samoa Joe, and I want to say Ty Dillinger.
Yeah, Ty Dillinger.
And that was when Ty Dillinger just started the 10 thing, but he was still a heel. And but like the first time, the card was great. I mean, I think it was right as Bobby Roode had even joined. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But like Finn was on his way to the main roster, and then of course Shinsuke had just joined. And to hear Shinsuke's music hit, like that was a moment I never thought I'd ever see, because the dude was New Japan Pro Wrestling. Like, he's never going to go anywhere. And then I was so mad because I was going to go to WrestleMania in Dallas, and some stuff had come up and I couldn't afford to make the trip. And then they announced Shinsuke Nakamura is going to be at TakeOver Dallas, and I'm like, you son of a against Sami Zayn too. So you have freaking Shinsuke Nakamura versus El Generico, like dream match here. And I missed out. So like the second they announced NXT was coming to Oklahoma City, bought those tickets. There was no way I wasn't going. So like to see him and Finn Balor together, like, you know, dudes that I'd never thought I'd ever see, and here they are tagging against Samoa Joe. Like, where am I? Like,
right.
So, I mean, just that moment, just seeing those guys was amazing. Second moment that, you know, is like a tie was the ROH house show at the Cox Convention Center like 3 years ago. It was when Cody was ROH champion, and me and a whole bunch of guys went together. It was the first wrestling show that I took my wife to, and super jealous because Cody let her hold the ROH championship when we got our meet and greet.
Do you remember what shirt she had on that you had made?
Yeah, she had okay, so I made her a shirt. I worked at a t-shirt company at the time, Jimmy. And I made her a shirt that said the Bullet Babe. And it had like her own like version of the Bullet Club skull, but with like pigtails and the Harley White color on the pigtails. And
That's
Cody
amazing.
Cody looks at her. We're taking our picture together. Looks at her and he goes, "Is that one of ours?" And I go, "No, I made it today." He goes, "Dude, that is so cool." And he literally goes, "Here, hold this for the picture." And she's got the ROH championship just on.
Gosh dang it. That's amazing.
And he's got it. And it was when he had the ROH ring. So he's holding up the ring. And it's like one of my favorite pictures. Dude. And then meeting the Young Bucks like at the same time. Like,
I'm jealous about that, my dude. I love the young. Hey, my last name is Jackson. So I have to love. They're basically my brothers. We're related. So
Shout out to Papa Buck.
It's
Amen
Nick,
on that one.
Matt, and Jimmy Jackson. Like, that's the trio, right?
The tree. Well, yeah. Once I get in shape, maybe.
There you go.
You'll be the young buck with the beard. Like, that's how they'll know who you are.
Yeah, it's true.
But-
Well, I guess I mean, Matt is growing his beard out until the quarantine is over, is what I hear. So.
Well, you know. But we met them, and they were like the coolest people. Cody let Amanda hold the belt. We only paid for one meet and greet, so we were only supposed to get one picture. Well, like the Young Bucks were like, who paid for the picture? And I go, well, it's my wife really went. It's his, like it's for him. And they go, oh, okay. And they both grabbed two pictures and signed two pictures. So we have one that says to Amanda and one that says to Jake.
Oh, that's amazing.
And they're like,
nice.
it's cool.
I will
Go
say
ahead.
this, like, despite what people, their opinions about the Young Bucks, you can't deny their generosity towards fans. I mean, we've all seen
dude.
the videos where it's like, hey, like, we're going to be signing autographs for 4 hours because everybody's in line.
Right.
So love them or hate them, like, you can't deny wrestlers like that give the fan that moment.
There's just two
Even
good
if
Christian boys, you know.
Just two good
It's
Christian
true.
boys.
I love the Young Bucks so much. I think that they're fantastic. I can't wait till this whole quarantine is over and AEW can come to Oklahoma City.
Right.
One day.
Well, that card, like that whole card is that moment for me that like solidified me of what kind of wrestling fan I was, because like the Young Bucks in person is like poetry watching them work. Like everything is one fluid moment from the moment the bell rings till the moment the last bell rings. And you know, seeing Cody, he had an amazing match. Joey Ryan showed up that night. Like, to see Joey Ryan, and for what everyone says about Joey Ryan, you know, he's a great wrestler, but, you know, he's got a weird gimmick. He knows what his gimmick is, and he makes it work. But, like, the moment when my friend Tad popped his own tooth out because he has a false tooth to show the Briscoe brothers that he was missing a tooth, and made one of the Briscoe brothers break character for a split second on camera. Like, it was the greatest. Dalton Castle was on the show, and like, wow. Just to hear like how hot that room was, like, it's become like my favorite place to go watch a wrestling show, because people that go to that room to watch the wrestling show are the wrestling fans. They're not the people that are there to see John Cena and, you know, all this, which I'm not saying they're not wrestling fans either, but I'm like my kind of wrestling fans. So like, it's just really the moments that I've had in that room. And I really hope that like we get some more shows like that soon, because I need to see more of that wrestling live. Like, we're in Oklahoma, we barely get live wrestling as it is. So like,
totally,
when those moments just stick out, like they're incredible.
That's so sick. Should we talk about Mania? I mean,
I think what we should do, because we've been going at this for a while.
Okay.
I say we do our second episode. Let's make it a Mania recap, and this one can kind of be for whoever wants to listen. They get kind of a glimpse into who the brothers in Kayfabe are, because I think, you know, just what we've talked about, our encounters, whether it's an autograph signing or a show, or for me some phone calls. Once you get like a little intimate interaction with a wrestler, there's just something about that, like, it makes them more human. They're not just this person you watch on TV.
Oh man, totally.
It's somebody. It's like, whoa, like that's like I shook their hand, or like I took a picture with them, or like they said my name, or we talked to them. And it's just something like that. And I think that translates really well. And I think for us as a podcast, that's one of the things we want to do is, like, we're three good brothers in Kayfabe. And for all those of you that are joining us here on the first episode, or those that'll join us later down the road, like, that's what we want to communicate through this, that everybody's got what they like about wrestling. Everybody's got what they don't like. But the fact that there is something that we all like, and that's what draws us in and gives us those unique experiences.
And like I've said, like when we were talking about doing this podcast, is like, we are going to talk about things that are happening, but it's not going to be like, okay, now it's time for our weekly Raw recap. Like, I want us to talk about wrestling, what we're liking right now, like what we're watching, because I rarely ever watch anything that is new. Like, I am constantly going and rewatching old stuff, trying to find stuff I've never watched. You know, like I showed y'all, I got the 2K set of Jushin Thunder Liger matches. Like, I want us to talk about like what we're liking in wrestling right now, and it might be something from the 80s, the 70s, the 90s, you know, whatever. So, I mean, I think next time we should talk about Mania, because it was such a anomaly as far as wrestling shows goes. But like,
Yeah.
You know, I want this to be about our experiences in wrestling and not just necessarily what's going on in wrestling.
I think that's great, and I think, like, for me, since I am so new, I just like a lot of me gravitates towards the newer stuff.
Right.
Not necessarily WWE, although I do love a lot of what they do, but I know like all the AEW stuff is this like I love it. I
dude.
love AEW right now. It's a shit. I'm bummed that I haven't been able to watch Dynamite in like 3 months, but I just got the ability back to watch it. So I'm very excited. But yeah, I think that's great. And the thing I love about wrestling, at least so far, is it's brought a lot of cool people into my life that I know are placed there for a reason. And
Right.
it's cool to see that, to see how that works, even through something like wrestling. I will say, I want to say 2 things before we go, which I said I had 3 Big Show stories. One was the Raw that we went to.
Right.
The second one is the main event of Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania, which I don't even know. That's all I can say.
Well, technically, it
And the
was the hidden WrestleMania main event. That's
Well, I was going to
That is
say,
true.
can Big Show claim that he was in the main event for
the way
WrestleMania?
the way they're advertising it. Yeah, like it's the weirdest thing.
It is so bizarre. And the fact that he was a heel. Now, I've Big Show, correct me if I'm wrong, Big Show would do a thing they would do a thing with Big Show where he'd be like a face and a heel like every other week,
dude.
right? Like he'd just keep going back and forth.
Constantly over the last 20 years, he is like, there is no one that's turned face or heel more than Big Show. I mean, Landon, wouldn't you agree on that?
100%. And it's just like, it's one thing, like, he gives his best when he does it, but there's just a time where it's like oversaturation of it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I thought that was weird. The other thing I'll say is that my wife and I just watched today the first episode of the Big Show, and it is absolutely terrible, and I will watch every single episode they put out.
Okay, I got to ask you.
Yeah.
The way it was explained to me was it's like a Disney Channel TV show, but with the Big Show.
Dude, 100% yes. It's like, what if the Disney Channel original about, because the story is, at least like in the first episode, is like, oh, Big Show's daughter from the past marriage is coming to live with the family now. So the daughter's coming to live with her two half sisters and the stepmom and her dad, Big Show. I want to say that everyone in the show calls him Big Show. So like his wife calls him Show. It's not like they call him Paul. She goes, Show, I told you that it was going to be hard bringing her or whatever. It's ridiculous. So yeah, it's like, imagine that like the Disney Channel original, but Big Show's the dad.
I'm just saying,
Oh, no.
like, I can hear Vince McMahon calling these network producers, like the Netflix producers of this show, going, well, damn, pal, you can't call him Paul. You got to keep kayfabe alive.
Yeah, well, you got to call him Big Show.
Here's
gotta
what blows
You got to
my
protect the
mind.
business.
This is what blows my mind, and I'm not surprised at all, just because of how WWE is. The fact that they're pushing this show, and then Big Show just randomly comes out as a heel the night before it goes live.
Right.
To challenge arguably the biggest baby face in the company at this moment. And it's like, of course, that's perfect marketing sense.
It is in Vince McMahon's mind, maybe, but it's unbelievably weird. It's a really bad show, guys, and I want us all to watch it.
I mean, I think we need to do a watch along.
Honestly, like, during the first episode, I think there was probably about 8 times Kaylee and I looked at each other and said, this is so bad.
I think we 100% should do that. I think that's maybe we look at that for episode 3 is we do a watch along of episode 1 of the Big Show show.
I'm so down.
Oh my gosh. Well, like, that's just what's crazy about it is he comes out as a heel. They didn't have to have him come out as a heel. Like, it could have just been like, hey, Drew, like, I respect you. Let's fight. Like, I mean, that's how you promote a show that, like, is supposed to be like a kid's show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely a kid's show. I think it's pretty telling when I log onto Netflix, it didn't pop up anywhere. I had to search for it, so.
Right.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
It's going to be the biggest show. We make movies.
We make movies.
Hey, we'll get into this on episode 2, but they made some movies for WrestleMania.
Amen on that one.
That were phenomenal. So yeah, I think.
Can that be all we talk about next episode?
Yeah,
I'm fine with that. Well,
100%.
It's just those 2 matches.
Yep.
we could do it.
Oh, you mean the only 2 things about WrestleMania that I care about?
Exactly.
I mean,
so if for those of you who haven't watched WrestleMania, which I get it, this year was weird, so maybe you're watching it later.
Yeah.
Watch it before you listen to episode 2
I will say,
to avoid spoilers.
Yeah, and I would say especially if you can't watch it all, just watch the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse match.
100%.
If you even can call the Firefly Funhouse match a match. But, like, it was amazing.
The Firefly Funhouse extravaganza.
Basically.
Dude, it was the best thing. I know y'all loved the Boneyard match, but, like, I have watched the Firefly Funhouse match 4 times now. Like, it's just so incredible to rewatch. We'll talk about it next time, but
yeah, we'll talk about it. Cool.
So, Jimmy, you got any plugs for this week?
I will say that I'm new to this whole podcast world, but my wife and I have a podcast, which is called DateBit, D8 bit, and it is our podcast about video games and the games that we're playing together as a couple. So everyone should go check that out.
Cool. Landon, what about you?
I will say this about DateBit. I do some audio work for that podcast as well, and if you like video games and you like people just genuinely enjoying each other's company, I highly recommend it. For me, for plug-in, normally like I'd plug some music or stuff, but because of this quarantine, my music career is on the shelf at the moment. But if you or someone you know is into podcasts and maybe wants to start a podcast or need some help, reach out to me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Landon Bumgarner, and I would love to connect with you.
Well, maybe you should do one of these Facebook Live concerts like all these other artists are doing right now.
That's true. So if I do one of those, make sure you guys hit me up on Cash App or Venmo or PayPal. And give me some digital tips.
Oh, only if you sing Rapungi by Terry Funk.
Hey, it's Jimmy can back this up. I have played that song live, and I've sent recording of it for audio proof.
I love it.
So,
much.
I agree with that part. Like, you got to do that one. But if you do Rapungi by Terry Funk, you also got to do Rapungi Vice, the Trent Beretta, and Rocky Romero theme song.
Absolutely.
Rapungi.
We'll just have a Rapungi episode.
Yeah, we'll just talk about Rapungi all one episode. But
Jake, what do you have
for
to
me,
plug, my man?
For me, you can find me on Instagram at Monstar98. And I post there often about my other podcast, Best Movie Ever podcast, where I literally watch every movie that I have in my collection. You can find that on Facebook, too. There's a Facebook page, Best Movie Ever. just a picture of me. You'll see a picture of me with the letters BME underneath it. So go there, and then otherwise, this week we're watching Blazing Saddles. So that's gonna be a very fun watch because that movie is not exactly PC. So
It has, by today's standards, it has not aged well. So that'll be that'll be a good one to listen to, just to get your take on it as it happens.
that's what the listeners wanted. You know, last time we watched a movie called Six Pack. I put up a poll. I gave them like 4 or 5 movies to vote on, and like everyone wanted me to watch Blazing Saddles. So like I'm
Blazing
busting
Saddles
out.
it is.
I love it.
I'm busting out the VHS copy, and we're gonna watch it old school, how it was meant to be watched. So,
I will
but,
also say with this whole watch along concept that we talked about, we have talked about watching some old pay-per-views of different things and talking about those. So that might be kind of fun to put up to a viewer or a listener vote too.
well, I mean, obviously we talked about it. We've got to watch Wrestling with Shadows together, since I have that on a
Easily.
VHS. But we need to do that. Like, we all need to be in the same room for that one. Like, we need to wait till we're out of quarantine for that.
100%.
Well, I think that's it, everybody. So for Jimmy, for Landon, for me, Jake, we'll see you next week. And can we get some Too Sweets in here, bro?
Too sweet.
Too sweet! See you next time, guys.